Hey guys, what's up? It's Monday, so once again, time for another episode of The Breakfast Club. So, I was sort of in a kind of weird retro mood recently, and I was looking for old radio broadcasts of The Shadow. Yes, I like that old show. I may not have been born during the time when this show was being broadcast because this is back when the radio was a main thing before television and later computers and such. But I still like those old broadcasts. It was like thinking like I was in college when I first stumbled upon them, and they got a certain old timey charm to them, and the adventures were pretty well written. Plus, they're being narrated by Orson Welles. What's not to like, right? So, I was checking them out, and I actually found a couple of episodes on YouTube of all places. And listening to it again, I suddenly was hit with a very, a weird sense of. I hesitate to say the word irony because I'm not too sure if I'm using it right here, but I guess this is weird sense of coincidence or irony or something. In that, before the show began, you hear. Don't mind the beeping. That's the slow cooker. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, I'm listening to the show, and before he began, the guy then goes into a advertisement for tires. I forget exactly which tire it was. But he basically was like, before we start the show, how about we talk about these tires that you can get for your car and how good they are for the road and so on and so forth. And yes, I know, back then radios had advertisements, people would advertise their things. But it struck me as amusing how this was somebody who obviously had a show, but before he would start his show, he has to advertise for the business that's helping to pay for it on the show. There wasn't like a commercial break. Those would come later, which is what I'm sort of getting into here. But, here he is advertising a show, and now, many years later, here I am listening to this broadcast on YouTube, where we now see videos where people are now putting up their videos, as a livelihood. But before they go into their video, how about we talk about Squarespace? See? And that struck me how, we just keep going full circle. Nothing really has changed. And what I'm getting at here is how businesses seem to just, that in commercialism and marketing and all that, just ruins everything. I mean everything. This is what I mean. When radio first came out, it was considered a marvel in invention and communication, which it was at the time. It was a marvel at the time. And it, people were thinking how it was going to bring the world together, how, it was going to open up new channels of communication. And there were even some people talking about how it was finally going to start, disseminating information to more and more people. Educational things, news, all that sort of stuff, which is going to, democratize information and, make it easier for people to get to. And little by little, commercialization started settling in, which then started dictating exactly what you're going to be hearing on the radio, but not as much as later. Things, well, you see more of the commercialization these days, right? But you can slowly start seeing things getting more systemized with what shows you are going to be broadcasting. Especially since, you got to pay the bills. And if you got to pay the bills, you're going to go to some business or some advertiser. And sooner or later, the advertisers start dictating exactly what you can put up. I won't be advertising this sort of broadcast. Or, we want to, put our ads for a more wholesome show or whatever. Radio stations also started specializing more. Before you can, on a radio station, you hear several different things. Now you got stations specifically for specific things. And then they all tend to follow a very similar format because, this is the format that works, so let's just stick with it. The sort of, I'm not going to necessarily say that, early days of radio were very freeform. I mean, there was some structure. But the point is, it seemed to be more creative. I mean, think about it. You had shows on the radio. You get to hear different adventures and different stuff before the advent of television. And if you listen to some of these older shows, they were quite interesting. Nowadays, what's on the radio? Mostly just music, or angry ranting people, or the news. Maybe, you might see some more interesting things. Well, it's not see, hear more interesting things on like public radio. And even then, that tends to be kind of, streamlined, or there's, certain slots put in, and you know what you're going to get, Radio is pretty much a shadow of what it once was. Part of the reason why it's a shadow of what it once was is because television moved in. Now, what cracks me up is television kind of started out the same way. Oh, it's going to open up the doors, more information coming in, free information for the masses, education, all that type of stuff. The same crap that we've heard before. It's going to make, spread more information to more people, educate them. It's going to be all free, all this type of crap. And the same shit happened. You started systemizing things. Broadcasts started coming on. You got to pay for these shows. Now you go to the advertisers. Now the advertisers are dictating exactly what gets put on. And then the screws really started to get twisted in around the 70s and 80s. When now they're like, okay, now you can't say or show certain things on broadcast, both on the radio and TV. And advertisers really began putting the screws on that sort of thing, as well as government regulation, because it's like, we want to put wholesome things. In the 80s especially was all about being wholesome American. So, George Carlin found that out the hard way. We all know the story with that, the 7 words you can't say. We all heard about the stuff, the 7 words you can't say on television, 7 words you can't say on the radio, whatever. And shows had to be done a certain way. Advertisers wanted certain things done a certain way. Shows began being very samey, to the point where there was kind of a revolution against this in like the 90s or so. But the point I'm trying to make is, once again, this idealistic view of what television could be was gone. There were very few channels that were actually kind of carried that ideology, and even they were beholden to advertisers, to, finances. You got to pay for this stuff. So that creativity, that idealistic notion of what television could be, that hopeful, optimistic feeling of we're going to be, free broadcast, anybody can come on, put this stuff on, gone. Gone. Now it's about, you got the money, you got the backing, you're willing to put up what they want you to put up, then it can go on TV. Not screw it. And now it's a husk of its former self. Part of that was now because of what you're watching me on right now. The internet. Now the internet definitely, if those of you can remember, when that finally got put out to the masses, hell, when PCs themselves were being put out, it was a big chunk of why we're able to do what we're doing right now was because of people who wanted information to be free for everyone. This cannot be disputed. I know it's pretty much dominated these days by, mega corporations, like Comcast and all of them, who are doing their best to try to sink their teeth into the internet to force it to go their way. But all this crap, all this stuff, even Windows, all this stuff is beholden to people who originally wanted information to be free. They wanted the whole computer stuff, the spread of information, writing software, building your own machines. All that stuff was supposed to be part of this kind of free information movement. And some of these people are still around, but you don't hear about them anymore. They're still there fighting that fight, but the corporations took over that. Nowadays, if most of you guys, including myself, you're on a computer, you're running software that you had to pay for. Unless you got it through some other means. But generally speaking, if you're on Windows, you had to pay for that. If you're on a Mac, you had to pay for that. The software on there is tied to some sort of moneyed system. And more, they're now, instead of selling the software as products now they're selling it as services. So you got to keep on throwing money at to keep going. Or you want these special apps or whatever, you're going to be spending money on it. Things like Linux and Unix and or Ubuntu, all those other type of things, that sort of stuff is free, and that's sort of following that idealistic notion of free information, free software for the people. Not to make money on, not to commercialize, not to hook it up to some system that you are tied to, that you are beholden to. The internet was also an offshoot of this. The internet was definitely supposed to be some type of thing where people were supposed to be able to share information freely. You're supposed to, I still remember the older days of the internet. It's funny how it's transformed so much. These days, everyone, when they think of the internet, most of the time they're thinking of YouTube. They're thinking of videos. They're thinking of colorful web pages. And I remember during the early days when it was just text on a screen. And that was pretty much it. And small little images, if you were lucky enough to get the images, and if your dial-up was strong enough for it. I remember those long days of like hearing, there wasn't even a constant connection online. You had to turn on that 56K modem, and of course that meant that you tying up your phone lines. You hear that familiar little screech that us old timers remember, which I'm not going to try to do out of my throat because I got a little too much self-respect for that, even though I missed that sound. But yeah, I remember those days, and back then it felt like the Wild Wild West. Like you didn't know what you were going to stumble across, even though it wasn't as like nowadays. The internet's gotten a lot more sophisticated, but back then you didn't know what's like. There were just so many different sites about so many different things, and message boards. Yeah, you had your odd jackasses showing up on them, but by and large, people on message boards sent to people who knew what the hell they were talking about, and they weren't necessarily there to shitpost or troll. And if you were somebody who was, putting out crap information, you tended to get shut down pretty quick. If you didn't know how to, hold an argument, if you didn't know how to debate, at least the message boards I went to, you got shut down fast. Propaganda, BS positions just didn't hold sway much, at least in the places I went to. And then YouTube happened. And YouTube, those of you who've been on YouTube for as long as I have know how YouTube has changed. YouTube, I think, is a really good example of just how things have rapidly changed in a similar fashion to what happened to radio and to what happened to television. In that commercialization has changed why we do what we do on here, and why people do what they do on here. Before, people were kind of hoping to make a bit of money on the side, especially when YouTube started its whole partner program. But before, people were just putting videos up because they wanted to put videos up. You know what I mean? Like, we had something to share, and we were willing to share it freely. Putting up a video and just giving your opinion, or giving tips about something, or putting up recipes, or like whatever. You were just sharing stuff for other people to get. And the internet and YouTube has helped educate a whole lot of people. There are people who had no clue how to use Photoshop before they found tutorials online. First through text, then images, and then Google, and definitely YouTube. Somebody put up tutorial videos on there, and you learned from that, and then you got good at it, and then hopefully, some people were even able to make a living off of this stuff. And they got that stuff freely. The free dissemination of information. Anybody can, just put out stuff, and anybody can learn from it. And we now have tutorials and videos on everything from like just watching cats get cute to learning how to master programming, how to do software stuff, how to build stuff for your house, how to cook. Hell, I'm seeing like basic martial arts stuff being put up. It's amazing the potential of the internet. Not just YouTube, but the internet. I know I was supposed to be focusing on YouTube, but everything I'm saying can also be said about the internet itself. But it's gotten heavily commercialized lately, hasn't it? And things just aren't as fun as it used to be. Before, people would just put up a YouTube video because they felt like it. And nowadays, you got full production companies and people hiring other people to help them to edit videos and to get the right lighting and doing marketing research and checking the numbers and figuring out how to make a video go viral and what not to do to keep that from happening, and like how to keep our numbers up and all this other type of stuff. And that takes time, and that takes money, and that takes a focus, and now it's a job. It's not just something you're just doing for fun. Now it's a job. And part of that job now is also trying to figure out exactly what the masters at Google seem to want for YouTube, and being able to do what it takes to keep up with the constantly changing algorithms they're always doing. And these algorithms, for whatever reason, like sometimes it's whoever puts up the longest video. It used to be that. Then it wasn't the longest video anymore. So how many videos can you put up? And then after that, it's like, how many comments you can get on there and so on. It's always changing. But so much of these changes are happening because of money. Google's bleeding money from YouTube. YouTube loses more money than it takes in. And they're trying to bring in more money. And the main way to get money is through advertisements. We're back to that again. You knew that was coming. You knew I was going to have to mention that because it's prevalent. Many times when people are complaining about how the changes on YouTube, many times when people are complaining, my ad revenue is down. I used to make so much for my videos. Now I'm hardly making anything at all. Again, making money. I gotta pay for all this. I bought this new fancy camera. I got all this lighting here. I hired these people to help me do the editing. The software I paid for. The props I got. I gotta pay for all this stuff. This stuff is what's putting food on my table. So of course, now you're beholden to the advertisers. And the advertisers get to dictate what gets to be put on YouTube these days. Granted, there's some stuff on YouTube that I'm pretty sure some people are glad is no longer around. You had some people putting up some rather questionable videos, and I don't need to get into that here, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Or have some idea. But then there are other people who are just simply putting up some stuff that's simply avant-garde, or just simply not popular, but they get the axe, or they don't get their ad revenues. I know people who all they're doing is they're just doing videos on weapons. They're not doing videos on shooting schools. They're not doing videos on, destroying people or ending lives. They got an interest in weapons, and not even necessarily guns, just swords, nunchucks, maces, whatever. And they're not even showing people how to use them. They're just, hey, so this is a really cool sword, and this was how it was made. And no advertisement. This is too risque. This is not our market demographic, so we don't want our ads on here. And that dictates whether you get paid or not, and whether YouTube's going to support your video or not. History's repeating itself. This commercialization stuff just ruins everything. Now, this is not, I was going to say it stifles creativity, and it does. But, of course, people can just do whatever they want. I mean, if you don't care about making money on YouTube, if you don't care about making a career, then yeah, you could just still put up whatever the hell you feel like. And there are some people who still do. But it isn't the way it used to be. In the past, it was very easy for me to find some video that was completely different from somebody else's. One person could be talking politics, and another person could be making a very interesting storytelling project. Now, good luck finding that stuff. It's buried somewhere, but if you go on YouTube's front page, those aren't the videos that you're going to see put up there. It's going to be very hard for you to find something where somebody's going to be doing something completely different. Everybody's pretty much doing the same thing, even if they're all talking about different things. Everyone wants to be entertaining. Whether they're talking about video games or how to make shoes, they want to be entertaining. And they'll always ask you to please comment, rate, and subscribe. Because that's how you get your videos noticed on YouTube. That's how it's done. I don't really know what to do about this, to be honest. And I'm not even too sure if all of it is necessarily a negative thing, but I do know that once you start throwing money at something, once the commercialization takes in, once it takes hold, once it gets set in, the fun stops. And sooner or later, whatever it is that it sinks its teeth into, it just sucks it dry. It becomes a dry husk of what it once was. Look at what radio is these days. Look at what TV is these days. The internet's going the same route, guys. And it's a damn shame when you consider the potential it has. Then again, television had that potential too. Radio had that potential too. We just love ruining things, don't we? Once again, I ended up on a sad note. I'm sorry, guys. These are the things that tend to occupy my time when I'm alone. I start thinking. Anyway, again, something to think about. Whether you agree with me or disagree. Just hope I was able to present something that you guys found interesting. So until then, take care. Catch you guys later.